Cowboy Bebop stands as one of the most influential seinen in anime, but something I've noticed when I revisit this show is how difficult it can be to structure a timeline of events, along with understanding the backstory of each character. The show goes back and forth between plot progression and weekly monster stereotypes, having them hunt a bounty almost every episode. But even sprinkled in these episodes that may seem unimportant at face value, there's something to take away about the characters themselves, the real focus of the show. I've divided this video into chapters for each of the Bebop members, each section telling their own personal story, all coming together in the finale for one last adventure. But to truly make sense of Cowboy Bebop and understand the world they live in, we first have to go back to the start. An explosion of an experimental gate that would allow for hyperspace travel damages the moon, leaving the Earth to be showered by chunks of rock, destroying cities and killing millions. With no time to rebuild, with asteroids falling at the same rate we currently receive rainfall, the population of Earth drops to only 1.5 billion. From the original 6.2. With the planet becoming near unhospitable, a majority of humans leave Earth, colonizing places like Mars, Venus, the asteroid belt in between, and Jupiter's satellite moons, all thanks to new tech advancements making these planets both reachable and habitable. This did take some time to become the norm, however, that these astral gates would become stable, and reaching these new space colonies became less space Oregon Trail and more smooth sailing. Mars became the most popular destination for new settlers, deemed the new hub of human civilization, and it's with this move the concepts of politics, society, and economy changed drastically, with civilization opening up to the entire solar system. People began being born with no memories of Earth, and ethnic groups along with nationalities disappeared, people now coinciding with their new chosen planet. The economy soared in this new climate, but with this came a rise in wealth disparities, the rich and poor becoming further and further apart. This led to increased crime and unsteady social structure, and with the police force spread so thin across the galaxy, it became harder to control criminal activity. Organizations like the Red Dragon and White Tiger became influential in politics and the Intersocial System Police Force, ISSP for short. In attempts to counteract this new issue, the ISSP enacted the bounty reward scheme. If you caught a criminal, you get paid a hefty sum based on that person's wanted level. And with that in place, our space western begins. Going back several years to 2044, a child named Spike is born on Mars to parents that we receive no information on. It's very possible that he became an orphan at a very young age, originally being raised in the slums, becoming a thug and thief in order to survive. He would eventually be picked up by Mao, a capo or underboss of the Red Crime Syndicate, over time becoming one of their top men. Along with Spike, Mao sponsored another into the Red Dragon, Vicious. With the two being the best Red Dragon has to offer, they both became candidates for Mao's position as capo, each with conflicting opinions on the matter. While Spike is uninterested in the position, Vicious craves the power, having a very selfish, ruthless personality, the polar opposite of Spike. The two do not get along. Another wrench between their relationship is their love for the same woman, Julia. While Julia is implied to be in a romantic relationship with Vicious, after nursing Spike back to health following a shootout, the two begin to have an affair. In light of this newfound romance, Spike desires to run away with Julia and leave the world of crime, but one thing stands in their way. The only way to leave the Red Dragon is in death. One of the only rules to be upheld in the syndicate, put in place by the Van, the Elders of Red Dragon. During this time, Vicious had enlisted into the Mars army, taking part in the war on Titan. Not much is known about the cause of the conflict, but during this war, Vicious meets Gren, who admires the strength he holds. While he has no desire for Gren's camaraderie, Vicious gifts him with the music box Julia gave to him, before falsely testifying against him in military court for being a spy. Why Vicious did this is unknown, but it's not outside his character to do it, just to torment Gren's kind heart. Having been suspecting unfaithfulness by Julia with his rival, he likely became even more bitter and hateful than he was before. Spike sends Julia a note stating he plans to fake his death and wants her to meet him at the cemetery so they can run away together. But Vicious intercepts this note, learning of the plan. Angered by the betrayal of his lover, he gives her two options: kill Spike, or you'll both reunite in death. Unwilling to kill the man she loves, she goes into hiding for the sake of them both. When Julia doesn't show, and he's ambushed by the Red Dragon in the graveyard, he assumes that she either died or sold him out to Vicious, unaware of the threats he made on her life. Despite her disappearance, his love for her is undying, not something that would leave him anytime soon. Spike is able to fake his death in the shootout and is presumed dead by the Red Dragon. He's escaped them, but in his own words, he has already died, having lost the love of his life, his other half. Sometime in 2068, Spike befriends Jet, a former ISSP officer turned bounty hunter. The two partner up and on the Bebop travel the galaxy hunting petty criminals. But Spike is subconsciously only interested in a search for someone he knows he may never find. Julia meets Gren while he plays the sax in a local club on Callisto, one of Jupiter's moons, primarily populated by male convicts. Meeting Julia after his set, the two become friends, both finding comfort sharing their past with each other. Julia, her lost love Spike, and Gren, his lost friend Vicious. After hearing about his connection to Vicious and about the music box, she implores him to check inside it, revealing to both of them a tracking device. After he was taken into custody for espionage, he had heard rumors that it was his friend who testified against him, but he fought with that idea, desperately hoping it was not true. While imprisoned, he was experimented on with various medications they used in an attempt to stop his psychotic breakdowns caused by the betrayal he felt. Realizing now that his greatest fear has come true in front of his eyes, he's angered and sets forth a plan to lure Vicious to this planet and resolve the past relationship he cannot shake. Spike consults Laughing Bull, a Native American spiritual guide that he hopes will help him find the bounty he's after. A young couple attempting to escape the Red Dragon, using Red Eye to trade enough credits to leave the area, a subpar plan at best. This Red Eye is a drug popular for trade and crime syndicates. It's an immensely powerful steroid and stimulant, giving one a tad tease of super strength. Laughing Bull tells Spike where he'll find them, but also warns him in the near future he will meet a woman, be hunted by this woman, and then death. Spike has no real interest in fate or this prophecy, brushing it off, saying he was already killed by a woman once before, a hint that he cannot let go of his time with Julia. Spike's attempt to apprehend the couple becomes difficult, with Red Dragon in hot pursuit of the pair as well. Spike sees himself in the couple as they make efforts to leave the syndicate, but in the end they are all but successful, dying at the hands of the Red Dragon. Time passes as a woman and dog have joined the Bebop crew, much to Spike's distaste. He makes note that there are 3 things he hates in this world: animals, children, and women with attitudes, and 2 of those have found themselves on board. Realistically, they are both still here because he has too good a heart, unwilling to let the dog be taken advantage of if returned to the mad scientist they were performing the bounty for, and not so reluctantly letting Faye stay aboard the ship after their fated meeting at the casino job. While it may seem on the surface level that Spike is easygoing, there are times where that's quite the opposite, whether it be arguing with Faye or a piece of his past, this time it being the latter. Current talks with the Red Dragon and White Tiger Syndicate are at work to resolve a conflict between the 2 organizations. The talks led by Mao goes smoothly, but as the White Dragon ship takes off, it doesn't quite reach the atmosphere. Having felt that Mao has grown soft, Vicious along with his loyal underlings kill Mao. Vicious smiles as Mao reminds him he would have never done such an aggressive maneuver if Spike was still around. The Red Dragon elders are oblivious to Vicious's involvement in this incident, but they do suspect it. Spike is initially suspicious of this bounty on his former boss's head and seeks to gather information from a friend of his past. Faye, on the other hand, rushes in headstrong to apprehend Mao. Annie, a syndicate associate, is surprised to see Spike alive, but stifles her anger for being left in the dark, telling Spike that Mao is already dead, the bounty being a trap to lure Spike in by none other than Vicious himself. It seems he never believed Spike died all those years ago, and now Faye, falling into the trap, becoming the bargaining chip to get Spike to the meeting grounds. Spike arrives at the appointment in exchange for Faye's life, facing off against a small squad of Red Dragon assassins and Vicious. He's able to defeat all of them, but in an exchange against his rival, he is pushed out a several-story window. Falling to the pavement, his life flashes before his left eye. He sees images of his past in the syndicate along with Julia, more clues to us of his repressed longing for her. Spike's eyes tell us a lot about him as a character, him stating that his right eye, which was at one point replaced with an artificial, sees the present, his left only seeing the past, making this close-up on the left eye all more impactful of a scene. As he falls, he's able to throw a grenade at Vicious, injuring him, but the two both escape the encounter alive, Spike being picked up by the Bebop crew. More time goes by. A child named Edward, a hacking prodigy, joins the crew of the Bebop. As things get more complicated aboard the ship, Faye flees to an unknown planet, running away from her fears of abandonment and confused feelings towards her companions. While searching for her location, Ed comes across the name Julia on Callisto, along with Faye's location, which sends the normally lethargic lethargic Spike into a frenzy of action at the news she is still out there, alive, causing him to begin a search. While Jet insists they look for Faye first, as Callisto is majorly populated by men, making it dangerous for her to be there, Spike cares not for her in comparison to Julia. He assumes that a man named Gren would have information on her, as he has been seen with women here before. Little does he know that the name drop of Julia was Gren's longtime plan to lure Vicious to a meeting with him. Getting a direct request for a red-eye trade is unusual for Vicious, but given the fact that someone named Julia is the one attempting to make the trade, he's more than interested. The van allow him to go as long as Lynn, a more loyal Red Dragon member, accompanies him. While in search for Gren, Spike encounters street thugs who confuse him for Vicious. Being confused for the man he despises sends him into a fury. While beating the thugs, he realizes that Julia is a code word for an ongoing red-eye trade involving Vicious and this man named Gren. With his anger still boiling, he decides to go kill Vicious while he's on this moon. The two have a run-in with each other, both cursing the other with words of hatred. Vicious throwing Spike off guard with the information that only but 2 years ago Julia had been here. Information he has thanks to the music box tracker. Before Spike can shoot him, his former underling and friend, Lynn, shoots Spike and the two leave the scene. While lying in the snow, Spike dreams of his past, the eye surgery, conversations with Vicious and Julia. When he wakes, he realizes Lynn shot him with a tranq, seeming to not want to kill his former friend. Vicious and Lynn go to the meeting point. Gren then reveals himself from his disguise once Vicious and him trade cases, asking him why it is he testified against him during the War of Titan. Vicious simply states there is nothing to believe in, not faith, hope, love, trust, nor camaraderie. He simply did it out of annoyance of Gren's desire for kinship, nothing more. Upset, Gren attempts to shoot him, but Lynn jumps in front, taking the bullet. Ironically, what saved Vicious was the exact thing he refuses to acknowledge. Having laced the suitcase with an explosive that Vicious narrowly avoids, Gren takes to his ship, firing upon Vicious as he retreats to his own. Jet contacts Spike, who is still lying in the snow, telling him to make up for his behavior, he needs to grab a bounty target. While initially uninterested, hearing that it's none other than Gren, who may know something about Julia's whereabouts, sets him into action. Spike reaches the site of the explosion. The three enter a dogfight, resulting in Gren being shot down and Vicious's ship heavily damaged by another planted bomb. Spike goes to Gren's crash site, hoping to get some information out of him, but he's left disappointed. While Gren is unable to provide information on her whereabouts, he knows who Spike is just from what Julia talked about him. He shares this with Spike, and while he may not be any closer to a reunion, he at least can take solace in the fact he has not left her mind. Spike returns to the Bebop after one last confrontation with Vicious, leaves the two unable to solve their conflict once again. Despite their disagreement about Spike's search for Julia, Jet welcomes him back with open arms. He understands that she is part of the demons of his past. Spike has been unable to come to terms with this past, to carry the weight of it. He's unable to let sleeping dogs lie, and come time, he will be bit. Growing up, Jet had a strong sense of morality. Sometime in the 2050s, he joined the ISSP as an investigator, and with his partner Fad, he became a prominent figure, earning the name Black Dog after his unbending will to see a case to completion. During an ongoing investigation on the Blue Snake Syndicate in the 2060s, Jet befriended a member, Pow, who gave him information on the organization in exchange for helping him leave the syndicate. Seeing that Pow feared for his daughter's safety and wished to protect her, he agreed, but was not too confident on the success, as Pow was in so deep that escape may not be possible. Pow would later disappear, Jet assuming he was either successful or killed in his attempt to get out. During the same time, Jet had a relationship with Elisa, whose presence got him through the hard days of work. However, when returning home one day, he found a note only saying the words, "Farewell." Left with it was a pocket watch. Jet was stricken by grief over this and vowed that if Alyssa did not return by the time that pocket watch stops, he would leave this moon he's known as home. Throwing himself deeper into work with the disappearance of his love, Jet and his partner Fad began a deep investigation of a European crime syndicate that had corrupted most of the ISSP. After tracking down an affiliate by the name of Uday, Jet and Fad pursued the gunman. The two get separated, Jet cornering the man, but just at that moment a spotlight flashes him, and in the daze his left arm is shot with enough force to tear it off. Fortunately, Jet survives the attack and Uday is arrested. Although with scientific advancement it is possible for him to regrow an arm, he's opted for a metal one as a reminder of the incident. By 2064, the pocket watch no longer works, and Alyssa is nowhere to be seen. Jet, disgusted by the corruption of the ISSP, leaves both the moon and the Force, buying a former fishing ship, which he gives the name Bebop over his love for the corresponding genre of jazz, beginning his journey as a bounty hunter. It would be 4 more years before he would meet Spike, becoming his new partner and close friend. 3 years after that, the two would obtain 3 more crewmates, a dog, woman, and child, the latter which Jet feels a parental care for. For the most part, Jet has left his past back on the moon of Jupiter, content with what he has. But quite obviously, the past still eating away at him, shown by the pocket watch he still holds on to, a memento of his life with Elisa. After capturing a hefty bounty, Jet's forced to deliver them to his home planet. Much to his dislike, he decides to resolve his past with Elisa while there, going to the bar that she now owns. In shambles, the place is set to close down, Jet being the last customer to visit there. She insists that, despite the closing, she's doing alright, introducing Jet to Rent, her new boyfriend. After Rent steps out, Jet questions her on why it is she left him all those years ago. She's very cryptic in her answer, refusing to give him a full picture. Unsatisfied, Jet decides to leave, but soon learns from Spike that Rent is wanted for murder with a hefty bounty on his head. Rent, figuring out that Jet is a bounty hunter, prompts Elisa and him to make a run for it, Jet pursuing them. Once caught, Jet only questions Elisa, not to focus on the bounty, knowing that the man Rent killed was threatening to do the same to Elisa if she didn't pay him back for a loan. He simply asks her to tell him the truth. Elisa tells him that she wanted more freedom and independence from life, even if it meant making terrible mistakes. With Jet, things were laid out for her. He had things sorted out. With him, she didn't need to worry about a thing, but to her, that was suffocating. She wanted to make mistakes, screw up on her own, which is exactly what she does both in business and in her relationship. While Rent and her do love each other, they both make stupid mistakes. And as Jet sees that what she currently has is what she wants, he lets them go, knowing that what she was to him is in the past, gone. Before leaving his home planet for the second time, he leaves the pocket watch here too, reaching resolution. It isn't until after the fiasco with Faye and Callisto that the other portions of his past life come to haunt him as well. His old friend Fad informs him that Uday has taken control of a prisoner's ship and is attempting to escape. While Jet initially doesn't care anymore, he's left that grudge in the past, Fad eventually convinces him in recapturing the man that took his arm years ago. Jet corners Uday once again, but to his surprise, Uday reveals that Fad was the one that shot Jet's arm off, a crooked cop himself. Before he can go on, Fad appears and shoots Uday, turning his gun on his old partner. Fad admits to this betrayal, and in a shootout with Jet is mortally wounded. As he lies there dying, he admits to Jet that the reason he wanted to work on this case together was because he was nostalgic, missing the old days they used to be partners in. Before leaving, Jet sets the scene to look like Fad died heroically in a shootout against the prisoners. Though the man may have betrayed him, Jet still thought of him as a friend. Not long after, Jet helps Pal's daughter find closure with her father's death. She believes that he is still alive, as Jet helps her decipher a cryptic message left by him suggesting his location. They end up finding him trapped in hyperspace, where they say their goodbyes, as there's nothing they can do to save him, the final string of his past reaching a satisfying conclusion. A short while later, both Ed and Faye leave the Bebop without telling them where they're going. Jet accidentally helps Ed in locating her father, who is still living on the destructed Earth. Although Ed's father shows no interest in his child, Ed desires to stay behind on Earth with him, and joining Ed here too. Ed gives Jet a final memento, a pinwheel to remind him of her, and says goodbye to the Bebop for good. While seeing Ed go is hard for Jet, he knows that it's what she wants, and he accepts the decision, leaving Spike and him, once again, the only members of the Bebop. Faye was born to a wealthy family in Singapore. She lived a normal life and in high school recorded a video for a time capsule project that will come into play later. When she turned 20, her parents and her travel abroad on a private spacecraft, but something goes horribly wrong and her parents are killed. Faye left severely injured. When she's found, her injuries prove untreatable by current day medicine, so they opted to cryogenically freeze her until a remedy for her condition is found. This would keep her both from aging and dying. During cryo sleep, however, the hyperspace gate incident occurs, and during the countless meteor showers on Earth, the lab she was kept at was severely damaged, and along with it, the data about her identity. Only her first name remained. 54 years later, in 2068, Faye was finally awoken and cured, but the doctor that would assist her was less than satisfactory. He informed her that she was in a debt to him of over 300 million credits. Suffering from severe amnesia, she didn't have a clue of who she was and how she got here, causing her to panic. Seeing the vulnerable state she was in, the doctor and his nephew Haggis planned to take advantage of her in an elaborate scheme. Haggis Haggis pretended to have feelings for Faye, and his comfort and helping hand made her quickly fall for him. He gets her to sign her will, saying things like, "I want you to have my assets if anything happened to me," but what she didn't realize is that all this man had was 35 million credits of debt. The group staged a ship that Haggis convinced Faye was her creditors looking to cash in, telling her to run to the hospital and not look back. As she does, she hears an explosion. Haggis is deemed dead. It was soon after that she would find out that she was duped, sunk into more debt by taking on that asshole's own. Unable to pay the millions, Faye chose to live a life on the run. She would do small schemes and steal goods. Because of this, she ended up incurring a 6 million credit bounty on her head. Having had such a bad first encounter when she first awoken, gone was her compassionate, kind personality of her pre-accident self. She became distrusting, irresponsible, and angry. She didn't want to be alone, but she also couldn't trust anyone after what was pulled on her. Eventually, a gambling debt of hers caught up to her. The casino owner, Gordon, forcing her to work for him. It was here in 2071 she has a run-in with Spike and Jet when the two attempt to collect a bounty on her head, which eventually is dropped. She's able to escape, but is later picked up by them after her craft runs out of fuel. After the three get roped into doing a job together, Faye invites herself onto the Bebop. While Spike and Jet do not agree with this, seeing that they'll have no luck kicking her off, they just let it be. After several hunts and being saved by Spike from her captor Vicious during the May bounty trap, Faye has a crisis. She's afraid of her newfound affection she has for her comrades, afraid of becoming more attached, and afraid of the possibility of abandonment. She follows her motto, leave before being abandoned, flying to the moon Callisto, where she stumbles upon Gren, who she quickly befriends. She, for some odd reason, feels comfortable telling Gren about herself, explaining the crisis she was having. Gren was very reassuring, and when telling her about himself, Faye jumps when he mentions his connection with Vicious. He explains the plan he intends to execute, which puts her more at ease, knowing he isn't one of his faithful assassins. But she does become upset. She tries to stop him from going, offended that he's befriended her and now is going to risk his life in a plan that could go all sorts of wrong. Even in her newest of friendships, her fear of abandonment is strong. He apologizes to her, as this is something he must do to reconcile with his past, and knocks her out, handcuffing her to the bed so she cannot stop him. Jet eventually finds her and takes Faye back to the Bebop while Spike deals with the feud between him, Vicious, and Gren. While lounging on the couch, Faye mutters the name Julia, curious of the past that it brings with Spike. While the two may bicker 90% of the time they are together, it is quite obvious in the other 10% of moments that the two care for each other. Faye shows it in moments where Spike puts himself in severe danger, when he's injured, and moments like these, while Spike is much better at hiding these emotions. Faye, looking at Yen, is reminded of her wake from cryosleep and tells the dog of the events that transpired, obviously wanting to confide in someone about her troubled past, but not in someone who could comment on it. Unlucky for her, Spike was listening the entire time and comes out to tell her to forget the past and live in the present. Ironic advice coming from a man who is more caught up in his than anyone else on the Bebop. Embarrassed that he overheard her, Faye storms off, dismissing what he said. In the meantime, Jet returns to the Bebop with a bounty, who is none other than Haggis, the man Faye fell for and who she thought was dead. After interrogating him about what really happened that day, Faye is left enraged and attempts to get the full information of what happened to her from him. He states that neither he nor the doctor, his uncle, know. They found her in cryosleep, her records destroyed except for her first name, and decided to take advantage of her. Disappointed that she is no closer to solving the mystery of her past, she turns Haggis in herself for the small bounty he's worth. A small satisfaction, but still one at that. A package arrives at the Bebop for Faye. Fearing it's from a collector or worse, she flees before opening it. Jet ends up paying the delivery fee and finds the package strangely containing a VHS tape. While they don't have a player for it, oddly enough, one is delivered not too much later. Spike and Jet end up watching the tape, not making too much sense of the contents, except that it seems to be from Faye's past. Faye at this point has returned to the ship and has been watching from around the corner. She studies the contents for the next several days, confused by them as she has no memory of these events. The girl in the tape is much different than who she is, making it more perplexing for her. Ed watches her study this and mentions she might know where to find the area in which it was recorded. She ends up taking her up on this. While she stands at the same place her younger self stood, an elderly woman approaches her, introducing herself as a former classmate of Faye. Initially thinking Faye was a ghost since she was still so youthful, but when Sally approached her, she realized that she was still alive, just has forgotten all their memories together. Sally attempts to help Faye remember information about herself, sharing memories, but this scares Faye and she runs away, afraid of the absences in her head. After the discovery of her youth and the tape, Faye is influenced by her younger self, becoming more empathetic, vulnerable, and caring to the Bebop members, encouraging Ed to find where she belongs when she's at a crossroads after finding her father. Not long after, her memories resurface while on the Bebop during a shower, and she quickly decides she needs to leave for good. But when returning to the location of her home, all that is left is rubble. She traces the perimeter of her room, lying where her bed used to be. Here she realizes that living in the past isn't really living. She's holding on to something that doesn't exist anymore. The life she had on Earth is gone. It was, but isn't anymore. What she currently holds dear, where her home is now, is on the Bebop, with Jet, Spike, and while Ed may be gone, she is family no less. While frustrated that her old life no longer exists, she decides to return home, having reconciled with her past. And that's when she sees him. While Ed and Ed have rather small roles in comparison to the other three members, their presence aboard the Bebop allows the three adults comfort and chances at growth. They help Spike open up himself to the things he shies away from, dogs and children, most likely stemming from his fear of attachment after losing Julia. They give Faye chances to open up to someone as well as experience affection, albeit something that she still fears. Ed allows Jet to experience a type of fatherhood, something we can tell he quite enjoys. While Ed may just be a dog with no major story growth to talk about, he's an emotional support for the crewmates and a good friend to Ed. Thanks to the Bebop, he escapes the experimentation lab that held him captive, giving him a new, better life. Ed, on the other hand, has a rather mysterious background. Ed's father was quite an eccentric man. Having forgotten to pick her up from daycare, she was left deserted, living with random strangers for the next 2 years. She eventually wandered into an orphanage where she spent 2 more years before leaving it too, probably in search for her father and for greater freedom. Ed was a genius-level computer hacker, growing quite the legacy across the galaxy, being able to pretty much find and track whoever and whatever she wanted. She became fond of the legendary Bebop bounty hunters and desired to join the crew. Seeing that they were near Earth on a bounty hunt, she hijacked the ship's controls, forcing them into taking her up on the hunt, which she proved very useful in. Despite this, they tried to leave without Ed, as they felt the ship was no place for a kid. But Ed once more seizes control of the ship as ransom for letting her join the crew. They eventually caved. Over the year they all spend together, Ed bonds primarily with Jet, Faye, and Ed. While Spike and her do not have much of a relationship due to Spike's reclusive nature, they get along alright. When the time comes and Ed helps Faye find her old home, the two visit the orphanage she stayed at for a couple years. There she's told that her father had been there looking for her, sparking her on a journey to reunite with him, bringing her past full circle, just like every other member of the Bebop. After tricking the crew into finding her father by putting a fake bounty on his head, Ed is reunited with her father. The man recognizes Ed, offering to take her with him if that's what she wants. Another meteor shower begins, prompting the crew and her father to part immediately after she's posed this. While on the Bebop, she considers the option, unsure if she should leave the crew and join her dad. Faye encourages her to make the decision that she will be most happy with, and she decides to stay on Earth. She leaves Jet a pinwheel as a memento and says goodbye, walking off into the desert. En runs after Ed, who's treated the dog like her own pet, showing him great respect. At first, Ed is unsure if she should let En come along, but after he shows Ed it's what he desires, Ed is overjoyed to have the dog along with her. The crew, while originally not wanting the child to come along, are sad to see Ed go, but this is where her journey led her, back to her father once again, along with a new companion. With Faye, En, and Ed leaving to find themselves, Spike and Jet find themselves at the loser bar, depressed, though they may not admit it, unaware of the Red Dragon members stalking them in the shadows. Moments before, Vicious enacted a coup, attempting to dethrone the band as leaders of the syndicate. They suspected this thanks to the words of a fortune teller and apprehend him. In light of this coup, they send an order to wipe anyone with a connection to Vicious. This includes Spike and Julia. Both that the van had been made aware are still alive. The loser bar quickly turns into a shooting range. In the firefight, Jet's leg is wounded, but thanks to the help of Spike's friend Shin, they're filled in on the situation at the syndicate. The two are able to escape while Shin covers them. Jet is troubled by Spike's past coming back to haunt him, reminding him that he is no longer part of the Red Dragon, that he shouldn't let it draw him back in. Despite his pleas, Spike's face tells us where his head is at. The moment that Shin said Julia was in danger, there was no questioning what he would be doing. By chance, Faye meets Julia, shooting at her assassin pursuers, jumping in her car as they make a getaway. As they lie low, Julia recognizes Faye as one of Spike's acquaintances. She tells her to let Spike know that she will be at the place. Catching on that this is the Julia that haunts Spike's past, she begrudgingly returns to the Bebop to deliver the message she knows will bring destruction. Jet shares a story with Spike with this conclusion. Men only think of the past right before death, as if searching for proof that they were alive, worrying that his friend is being sucked in by his own, never to return once it reaches its conclusion. So far, Faye, Jet, and Ed reconciled with their past, but they did so in letting go of it. The difference for Spike is that his past is something he cannot shake. While Jet pleads for him to forget the past, Spike shares with his longtime friend what Julia meant to him, his other half he had lost, the part of him he had longed for. It's not something he can let go of. Shocked at his his profession as Spike really talks about his past, Jet becomes understanding, knowing full well now this isn't something he can prevent him from chasing. Faye returns and hesitantly decides to give Spike the message from Julia. Immediately following, the Bebop is attacked by a fleet of Red Dragon fighters. He and Faye fend them off, afterwards Jet giving Spike a message, telling him to go to her to get back what he had lost. At the Red Dragon HQ, Vicious is put up for execution in front of the van, who comment on the futility of his coup, but to their surprise, a portion of their guards release him, a firefight commencing. It seems they underestimated just how deep the loyalty to Vicious runs. In the aftermath, Vicious has killed the 3 elders, taking their spot, becoming the sole leader of the Red Dragon Syndicate. Hearing that Julia and Spike have a planned meeting, his first order is to kill the pair. At the cemeteries, the 2 lovers reunite, although there's some rather heavy emotions in the air. Julia pulls a gun on Spike in a somewhat strange way of explaining just what would have happened if she showed 4 years prior. Spike asks her why she didn't take the deal to kill him and be free. In response, she poses a question of her own. Why is it that you loved me? The 2 embrace, agreeing to run away together like they had hoped to do. They stop by Annie's to gather supplies, but find her bleeding out from a gut wound. It seems that she was targeted during Vicious's attempt to locate Spike and Julia. The 2 sit with her during her last few seconds, a final moment of peace before chaos ensues. Both Jet and Faye contemplate what has happened, Faye passive-aggressively commenting that Jet was the one pushing Spike to go, and Jet lashing out at Faye, obviously due to the conflicted feelings he has, on his last words to his friend. He asks Faye what kind of girl Julia was. Faye responds, she was the type of girl you just couldn't leave alone. Jet's face eases, feeling more like he did the best he could, urging his friend to see this through. Spike and Julia take a stand against the swarm of Red Dragon assassins. They're able to form an opening, rushing the rooftops, but a lone surviving gunman fatally shoots Julia. Spike can only watch on, in obvious anguish. He shoots the gunman and goes to her, but it's far too late. She struggles to say any final words, finally muttering to her love, something inaudible to us. Spike holds her in his arms as she passes on. Jet visits Laughing Bull, asking him if he knows where he could find Spike. He leaves him with an anecdote depicting Spike close to death, his star soon falling. Jet just can't believe his friend will die, but the teller leaves him with some wise words. Do not fear death, it will always be by your side. When you show fear, it will spring on you faster than light, but if you do not, it will only gently look over you. Much to the disbelief of Jet, Spike returns to the Bebop, commenting that he is starving for some food, prompting Jet to make him one last meal. Over the food, Spike tells a fairy tale, indirectly describing his personal life story to Jet. It depicts a striped cat who dies a million deaths, only to be reborn after each one. Never does this cat fear death, but one day he meets a white cat. Eventually the white cat dies of old age, leaving the striped one crying a million times in grief, before it too dies, only this time never to come back to life. Spike's point is that Julia was what made him feel alive. With her gone, he is, in every sense but physically, dead. Jet questions if this suicide mission he is about to embark on to the Red Dragon HQ is for Julia, but Spike simply states that there's nothing he can do for a dead woman. This is his own revenge. Jet is left torn. He understands his friend's desire to seek retribution, but knows that this road only has but one ending. Holding Spike at gunpoint, Faye pleads for him not to go. She tells him her memories resurfaced, yet nothing good came from it. The thing she was desiring this entire time only brought her a bitter bit of sorrow for what had been lost. She reminds him of what he said to her, to forget the past, live in the present, asking why he won't do the same. He edges closer to her, telling her that only his right artificial eye can see the present, while his left only the past, making it inseparable from his present. Spike has already lost the fight to move on from his demons. The reason he tells Faye to do so is so she doesn't end up like him, already dead, yet still alive. Still, Faye tries to convince him to stay, saying that Jet and Spike are the only family that she has. She can't lose him. She can't just let him die. But Spike simply states that he's not going to die, only to see if he's truly alive. Gun still pointed at him, he walks away, Faye's arm shaking. She fires the gun at the ceiling in defeat, sinking to the floor, sobbing. As Spike approaches Red Dragon, images of Julia as well as Vicious flash in his head. The 3 are bound by something otherworldly, their fates intertwined. The assassins are no match for Spike, only wounding him as he makes his way to the top floor, where Vicious awaits. The two rivals stand facing one another, Vicious commenting that he's the only one capable of killing Spike, Spike noting that this goes both ways. During the duel, both Spike and Vicious are critically wounded, losing their weapons in the process. They stare down one another, and Spike finally notes to Vicious that Julia is dead, that they should finish this. They kick their weapons back to each other, Spike being stabbed in a vital point, Vicious shot dead, given a quick death, while Spike suffers a slow one at the hands of a snake, per Laughing Bull's prediction. Spike looks up at the sky, the camera focusing on his right eye, showing Julia inside it, this being the first time in the entire series that he truly sees her in the present. He sees the memory of Julia's final moments. She was able to get the words out to him. His reply, simply, she passes on. Spike, and it seems Julia as well, most likely influenced through him, follow a well-known samurai philosophy originating from Bushido, the way of dying. One is already dead and only awakes as if from a dream upon passing. Spike seems heavily influenced by this way of thinking even before his first death, losing Julia for the first time. As he walks down the stairs of the Syndicate, the survivors in awe that he's still alive. Spike is cast in a great white light, with a happy, satisfied expression. It's here in this moment, upon death's door, that for the first time in years, he seems truly alive, truly present. He points a finger gun at the survivors, and the last words that leave his mouth, Cowboy Bebop can sometimes be difficult to understand just because of the layout of the show, backstory and plot being drizzled through some episodes that just feel like the bounty of the week, like filler. But these sessions give a lot more depth to the Bebop crew. While the way I laid this video out makes it easier to understand, human emotions can be more difficult to comprehend than the overall plot of the show. All of Spike's actions are done for love. While they can seem a tad selfish, especially when he dismisses Faye's disappearance and chases the ghost of his love, for him, this is all life is. Love can be toxic, all-consuming, and for him that's exactly what it was. Unlike Jet, who found his lost love but was able to say goodbye, Spike still burns deep, even after her death, unable to let go and say goodbye, instead rushing into death to meet her once again. All of the Bebop crew, as well as characters like Shin, Vicious, and Gren, are unable to let go of what they hold on to accept the present for what it is, bitter or angry about their past, afraid of what is now. A lot of characters share the statement, forget the past, live in the present, but funnily enough, none of them fully could, as the past can sometimes feel inseparable from the present. While Jet was content letting go, he still couldn't escape it from coming back into his present. Faye tried to hold on, but realized that there really wasn't anything to hold on to, helping her to appreciate what was right in front of her. Spike, on the other hand, never tried nor could shake the past, too in love with it, with the woman from it. His past consumed him, unlike the others. The deeper he went, the less of him there was to come back. He left the present the minute he left the Bebop, a place he was just passing time until the end of his journey came. Nothing there was able to anchor him to the present, and he tried as much to make sure of it. Jet understood this, which is why they got along so well, even at the end. While he wanted to stop his friend, he knew he couldn't. This is who his friend is, a man stuck in his past. Faye was far more unaccepting of the fact, afraid of losing him, understanding to a degree, but unwilling to say goodbye. Regardless, Spike faced the music, and met the fate that Laughing Bull described to him in session 1, one he was more than content with reaching. Cowboy Bebop's point is that no matter how much or little you try to shake the past, it'll always be with you, come back to you. But depending on how you handle it, your outcome may change. Will you let go of it like Jet, find a solemn realization in it like Faye, or live in it like Spike? We all must reconcile with our past, but in the end, it's up to you and you alone how you handle it. After all, you're gonna carry that weight.